Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Lunch with Alsace. I hope you're having a great fall in October. Those are dahlias fresh from my garden. It got a little cold out, and so the flowers started popping out in a very cool way. I hope everyone is enjoying themselves. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, everybody. We have a super Lunch with Alsace chat for you today. And as well before, but I see people are coming back in, so thank you so much. We're so excited to be here. We have a great interview and some great wines for you to taste, and here we are. Here's our guest. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming back to watch us on Drink Alsace with Lunch with Alsace. We have a fantastic producer, Marianne Schoffit of Domaine Schoffit, which is a family-run winery near Colmar in Alsace, who are producing terroir-driven wines. So thank you so much for being here, Marianne.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure. Well, we are waiting for a couple more people to come on, so I'll remind you guys who I am and what I'm doing. My name is Carrie Lynn Strong. I am a consulting wine sommelier, I was a wine director in New York City for 15 years for some fine dining restaurants. Some of them were pretty notable, but now I'm living in central Pennsylvania and I do events and gigs in New York City, but I do some really cool fun wine events as my consulting company. So we have a good amount of people on. So Marianne, why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
So I'm Marianne Schoffit from the Schoffit family, Schoffit estate, Domaine Schoffit in French. We are a fairly small estate. We have 17 hectares, so small in some standards, biggish for family estate still. We're from Colmar, based in Colmar, which is kind of uncommon for wine estates. The family is originally, the Schoffit family, we're originally from Colmar, so which explains that we have most of our vineyards in Colmar. So we have 10 hectares here in Colmar, and then we acquired, or my father-in-law, I should say, acquired 5 hectares of Grand Cru Rangen in Tannes in the late 70s, early 80s. So yes, mostly Colmar, a lot of still 5 hectares in Tannes, and then a tiny portion in Niedermarche as well in the Sommerberg.
And Colmar isn't that big, and neither really is Alsace in general. So when we're talking about not that big of a estate, I mean, not that big is really not that big.
Well, it is at the same time. So you would have bigger wine estates or cooperatives, and I know we've had a few, cooperatives or wine merchants that would make 10 times or 100 times more than what we make. Yeah. 17 hectares is biggish still for family estate, especially when you have 5 hectares that you have to do by hand 100%. So if we had, 20 hectares where we could use a tractor everywhere, we would still, probably have a bit less work. But I think 17 hectares, we're at that right level where we can still, be a fully functioning estate where we do everything ourselves. If we had 5 hectares, we would not necessarily have a labeling machine, or we would not necessarily bottle ourselves, or we would not have that kind of material. But more than 17, we would maybe a bit lose track of what we do in the vineyards, etc. While at 17 hectares, it's still small enough so that we do everything ourselves. And it's really mostly family members at the estate. It's my husband, his parents, a cousin still working in the vineyards. We have one other employee, but otherwise it's very much family managed.
And well, since you brought it up, when you're handpicking 100%, let's just dive right into your viticulture, biodynamic, organics. Are you certified? How does that work?
So just to clarify, we handpick 100%, obviously, but we also, when I said we do everything by hand, I mean everything. In Tannes is just very steep. So we do trellising by hand, we do weeding by hand, we do absolutely every pruning is always by hand. We do everything by hand. You cannot put a tractor in our vineyards in Tannes. But harvesting, obviously, yes, we do by hand. We're in the middle of it. So we're currently pressing the Gewürztraminer from Tannes at the moment as I speak to you. So we're still harvesting at the moment. I think biodynamic and organic viticulture, that's something that it's it's a question that a lot of people ask us. It's not necessarily I think, the main selling point of the estate or the most important thing to us. It's something that makes sense, became quite that came quite naturally to us, and it's a lot of the practices are just common sense, or all grandma's recipe in case of biodynamic. So it just came fairly naturally, keeping in mind, to be completely honest, that it's also sometimes easier in Alsace because we have less disease pressure. It doesn't rain much here, so in terms of fighting mildew and oidium, it's usually a bit easier, and we don't need as much products as other regions might, if I'm completely honest. So yes.
Well, that's kind of an interesting point too, that it doesn't rain much in Alsace. And I think that, as wine professionals, we understand the way that terroir works and how important the different weather patterns and conditions are, not only from year to year, but just the expression of the place itself. But oftentimes when people think about growing fruits and vegetables, for example, you have to have some sort of water, and it's really important. But it depends on the plant, and plants really thrive in different weather. That's why I brought out, I don't know if Mary, you saw my beautiful dahlias. I just picked them this morning from the garden, and they were struggling a bit. They're a little bit late summer flower, but they were struggling a bit to really bloom. And as soon as we got that crisp cold snap, boom, a whole bunch of them popped out. And so different plants require or thrive rather in different conditions. And so grapes,
but usually, and that's a nice thing with vines, they usually thrive where other crops don't, and that's where historically, and I mean not in the US, but really very much in Europe, where you find vines is where you couldn't grow other things because we're priorities. So if you needed weeds to feed your people, you would plant weeds. But where nothing would grow because it's too steep, too rocky, too dry, too difficult, you plant a very nice weed called vine, and then it still grows where nothing grows. And so the best sites where we grow vines in Europe, not only in Alsace, I mean, it's the same in Italy, it's very much in many places in Europe. The best sites are usually the very harsh ones. But what's nice, and as you say, any crop needs water. You do need water to some extent, but vines need much less. And when they don't have, when they are in a stressing environment where it's quite dry, where it's quite rocky, that's where the very good wines come from. It's where you have low yields, vines that produce a bit less, that produce something a bit more concentrated, and that's when it becomes very interesting. So it's having a bit less water can be very, very beneficial. In our case, Alsace is still a northern region in the world of wine. We're quite far north. If you would have, we can still make wine because we have steepness, so more sun interaction. We have usually falls that are quite sunny and still fairly warm. We have warm summers. If you go to the other side of the Vosges, so Alsace is dry because we're protected by the Vosges, right? So you would have the Rhine River, Alsace, then the Vosges mountains, and the other side, you still have some steepness, but you don't find many. It's not a big wine growing area because that's where it rains. So in Alsace, we're very much protected by the Vosges, and that's why we can make wine even though we're northerly region, because we have steepness and we have a lot of sunshine.
Well, let's talk a bit more about those rocks. You have some vines growing on some Grand Cru sites, yes?
Yes. Well, so I mean, we have fairly unusual soil types at the estates. We have so in Colmar we have gravel soil. So grave, like grave in Bordeaux, actually. So it's big pebbles on a very sandy soil. So we're talking of Alsace dry weather. In general, Alsace is quite dry. Colmar in particular is drier, so fairly dry. We get 500 millimeters of rain a year, so that's very dry, and it's a soil type that is very draining, and the water reserve is somewhere probably 40 meters down. So it's a very difficult soil to grow vines on, but it can make very, very good wine if you keep yields reasonable. I mean, you have to. And if you're lucky to have old vines, it also does make a very big difference. So we have gravel soil mostly in Colmar, and then we have volcanic soil in Tannes, which is very unique in Alsace. So it's a sedimentary volcanism, a beautiful site, very far south in Alsace, very steep, very dark, dense soil that again reflects the heat. And then we have a tiny patch in Niedermarschwiller, and that's granite. So we have two main soil types, and then a tiny piece of a third one.
And what was fascinating to me when we were on the Rangan earlier this summer was to be able to pull some of that rock out with your hand. Shows how the vines can actually grow into those rocky soils that look to the blind eye like a rock. It looks just like a rock.
And
actually,
and it is, but they're good weeds.
Yeah, exactly.
The dahlias would probably not grow.
What kind? Oh, that's all right. I got them growing down here on the flats. We have great river soil here.
Very stressing environment, and that's why. And we don't have any Pinot Gris from Varennes to taste tonight, so it's a bit of a shame. But that's why it's very, very good for Pinot Gris, for example, because you would put Pinot Gris on a fertile, easy soil to grow on, and it would, make volume. It would make a lot of grapes. It would be, and it wouldn't necessarily be very interesting. You put Pinot Gris, which is quite a productive grape. Otherwise, you put it in at the top of the Rangan, and you've seen it. It's hard conditions. It's steep. It's rocky. It's windy. It's too hot during the day, too cold at night, and that's when Pinot Gris really thrives and makes wines that are completely different. So it is a very interesting environment. You're right, and it's incredible to think that vines can grow there, while I can't even stand without falling, but they grow there and make excellent wine.
Well, you're in the thick of harvest. What are you up to besides joining me on an Alsace Instagram Live? What have you got lined up for the week?
Well, harvest is still happening, so mostly that. It takes most of our time and energy. Then we still have sometimes people coming to the estates for tasting, so that's still something that keeps us busy. Administrative work, I'm afraid, that doesn't stop for some reason. It should stop during harvest, but unfortunately it doesn't.
Nope.
And we have a wine event in Paris this weekend, so that's pretty much it. But otherwise, harvesting. We're finishing with the Rangan, so.
Finishing with the Rangan. How cool. Well, let's get into your wines. We have 3 wines with all this new technology, AI is writing people's letters. How come we don't have smell-o-vision and taste-o-vision yet? I don't understand. So we have 3 wines for you today. Would you tell us about them?
Yeah. So we have one Riesling from the Lydia was talking about from Colmar, so Art, from 2021, the vintage. We have one Gewürz from the same place, from the vintage 2019, and then we have one Riesling from the Rangan, 2021 again.
Which would you like to taste first?
We'll start with the Riesling Lydia Tradition.
Fantastic. So, tell us about this wine.
So it's a very important wine, I think, for our family, because it's really our historic, vineyards. Rangan is certainly what helped maybe making us a bit more, famous in a way, but really the art is very, very important to the Schoffit family because it's the family historic vineyards. And this is a wine made from old vines that are around 50 to 70 years old, mostly planted by my husband's grandfather. So, again, very, very important. It makes wines that are very, so as I was saying, so this is a gravel soil beauty. So it's, again, big pebble on sand. So difficult to, I see a lot of people say they love the Rangan. This is not the Rangan. This is a beauty art.
Oh, but the other one will be. We're going to taste
I
that
can
too.
see the comments, and it's not about that wine.
Not yet.
But I do have to like that one as well.
It will be, but this is the Ludi.
Exactly. So this is a Ludi. We'll drink the Rangan afterwards. So very, very different in terms of taste from the Rangan. It's so gravel soil tends to usually, I wouldn't say decrease the acidity, but really softens the acidity. So if you're used to Riesling that have a very sharp, vivid kind of straight acidity, typically German Riesling or granite Riesling, Here it's kind of the opposite. It feels very, it's a dry wine completely, but it feels very, very soft, very smooth, and that's typically gravel soil.
Got it.
So
See,
that's
everyone loves the Rangan. Everyone loves the Rangan.
keep on commenting on the Rangan.
We'll get there. We'll get there. This is a lovely wine. This is a lovely wine. But I get that. It's not, it does have Riesling acidity, but not like such high toned, you know, and I do get a bit, and maybe this is the perception of the acidity, as I'm getting it more salty and more minerally than, say, citrus and high acid and that type of thing.
Exactly. You would still get, I mean, a lot of citruses, but you would rarely, for example, get lime. Keeping in mind that, you know, you said it yourself, it doesn't have that harsh acidity, even though this is 2021, which in France was a very cold winter, a very cold vintage. It was raining the whole spring. It was raining the whole summer. It was cold all vintage long. So having a wine with a smooth acidity in 2021 really means that the terroir has the potential to really soften that acidity.
Of course, of course. All right, which wine is next? Do you want to go to Rangan or do you want to go to Gewürztraminer?
Let's do the Rangan first.
Everyone wants to do the Rangan
yes.
first.
So, finally, the comments about the Rangan will be on point.
We're there.
And if people start commenting on the Lieu d'Art now, then I just missed the point.
I promise they won't. Don't you guys do it.
So again, a Riesling, but it's completely different, and it should be. These are really just, it's not the same quality level in terms of terroir, so obviously it shouldn't really compare, but you can feel it gives a completely different feel. It's much more tropical in a way, and again, I don't speak of tropicalness in a sense that has any sweetness. It's a dry wine, but you can feel it's from a sunny place. It has still citruses because it's a Riesling, so you would still find a lot of citruses in the descriptors of your Rieslings, but it has a bit more of these tropical kind of citruses. You have a lot of clementine, mandarin, you know, kumquat rather than lime and lemon. You always have smoky notes on the Rangan. That's very typical of any volcanic soil. You get that smokiness very much at the size and a tiny bitterness. So a lot of people, when they think of Rangan, and you've been there during the day, I assume, you think of that big, powerful place. It is, so for viewers who may not know, it's very far south in Alsace. It's the southernmost. It's facing full south. While most of the Grand Crus face southeast, this faces full south. It's the steepest, so more sun interaction, dark, dense soil that really reflects the heat. So it has everything to be very hot. And you were there early.
It was quite warm
during the day. So people expect it to be a wine, you know, big, powerful, and most of it's in your face. What we don't think enough of, we sometimes forget about Rangan, it's also high in altitude. So the bottom of the Rangan is at 350, which, to give you perspective, Colmar is at 200 meters. This is at 350 meters at the bottom of the Rangan, more than 450 at the top. So it is hot during the day, but it's very continental weather, and the nights are cold. So yes, it makes a wine that's big and powerful, and especially the Riesling, it always has finesse. You know, it's still a delicate wine, has high acidity. It's still very fresh. You know, it's tropical and big, but at the same time very delicate.
Yes, and what the first thing that I noticed, well, on the nose, I was getting much more ripe fruit for sure, and I was thinking really like a really ripe pear, or you know, when you said kumquat, that absolutely. But the other thing that I noticed was that, yes, you got acidity, and with the Lieu d'Art, I got the acidity as well, but my mouth was just watering, really watering after the Rangan Riesling. So yeah, I understand how there's clearly acidity because it's Riesling, but there's a vast difference between the acidity in the Lieu d'Art versus the Rangan.
So this has much more acidity, to be fair, on the analysis, and you know, we shouldn't worry too much about analysis because it doesn't necessarily mean what the wine tastes, but in terms of really total acidity in the wine. It's much higher than the Lydia we had previously, which
Well,
is quite
let's
typical.
Well, it was fascinating to be on the Rangen, and I certainly recommend that anyone who's watching this try and figure out a way to get to Alsace. It's a pretty amazing place. Not just only the philosophy, but the culture and the people there are extremely hospitable, extremely optimistic, and the terroir is absolutely amazing. And I'm saying that, and as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, this sounds like I'm signing off. And no, I'm not. We've still got more wine to taste and some food to pair and some things to talk about. So let's move on to the Gewürztraminer.
So we're going back to Lieu d'Art. So, sorry.
I got a big glass for this one because look at that color. How beautiful that is. Oh, it's such a big wine. I love big whites.
And funny that you mentioned the color, because very often people look at the color to thinking of sweetness, and that it's a good indicator of sweetness or age, which it is in some ways. It's also a very good indicator of pH. And in this case, this is exactly it. You know, Alsace is well known for high acidity wines. Gewürz is well known for having no acidity or very little acidity. Add that to the fact that, again, it's from the Lieu d'Art that, as I said before, tends to decrease the acidity of the wines a little. And this is a wine that has very low acidity. But yet, and I hope you will agree when you taste it, it has a lot of freshness. And that's a very pleasant thing with Gewürztraminer. And in that case, it has residual sugar. You know, it's a fairly sweet wine, but it still feels fresh, not thanks to the acidity, but thanks to the bitterness. And bitterness brings a lot of nice things to wine. I mean, obviously you're having food, so I'm not sure what you're eating, but bitterness and food work extremely well. It's usually very nice pairings. And we have a bit more, I would say we have a bit more bitterness than many of our colleagues. You might, you know, with the Gewürztraminer, you sometimes expect a lot of floral notes, a lot of rose smell, lychee smell. Here we have a more rustic type, usually, and that's linked to the clones of Gewürz we have and to the age of the vines probably and to the soil as well. We usually have Gewürz that are a bit more rustic in a way, have a lot less of that floral notes and a lot more of this bitterness, of this ginger kind of taste. That's very much our style of Gewürz, which I find very food friendly.
Absolutely, and Gewürztraminer goes fantastically with, especially Asian cuisine, with all of that garlic and ginger, lemongrass, you know, so many cool flavors.
It does, and luckily the US is a bit more open-minded to other types of food. In France, we tend to eat French a lot, so sometimes a bit too much, and I find it a bit frustrating, you know, because I want to eat Asian food just to drink my Gewürz. But we also pair it very much with cheese. And you know, we're also at a time where we drink less, which is a nice thing in many ways. You know, we drink more reasonably, and sometimes we don't open 3-4 bottles for every meal. And the nice thing with Gewürz is that you can have it as an aperitif, have it with cheese. If you have a sweet and savory food, it works as well. You can have it for dessert, so you can really use it for several steps of the meal, and it's way more versatile and adapted to wine and food pairing. That's what we sometimes think.
Well, I wanted to bring out a fruit actually that I grew, and this kind of goes to the food pairing of it, but also it's going to go to the vintage, because I grow this fruit and I get a lot of them in the summer, but then we got this big hot spell for like a week to 2 weeks, and so I was able to get a whole bunch more of the fruit, and so I'm still trying to ripen them, but it's a very difficult food to pair. Tomato.
Okay. Oh, so do you mean, do you find tomatoes flavors in the Gewürz, or do you mean it pairs well with tomato?
So the thing about tomato is, what people don't understand is that it actually is higher in acidity. So you have to pair the acidity to the wine and the food. So what I was thinking, and what I would love, and I know you're not here with me and you can't enjoy it with me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it with both of your Rieslings. and see how we go. So
I,
I
it might,
have
yeah, it might be interesting.
a little
Because
caprese.
tomato is both high in acidity, but it's also a bit umami, I think. So
Yeah.
difficult
So,
pairing.
so I have my basil gone. Forget it. It gets a little bit of cold, and it's like I'm done. So I do have a pesto that I made earlier this year, and I have tomato and a little mozzarella. So then you get that creaminess, because we don't just eat tomatoes and then jump into a Riesling. We tend to eat a little bit more composed dishes. So I figure I'll try a bit of tomato, just to try and see how it goes with the pesto, which is sweeter. Of course, there's some, olive oil on it to fatten it up. But
So
I'm
what
going to see
might be
which.
worth a try as well, and I'm sorry I didn't send you any bottle of that, but so in Alsace we make muscat that's usually dry. Dry muscats go really well with vegetarian
Okay.
foods and incredibly well with herbs. So anything that has mint,
Mm-hmm.
basil, anything like that pairs very well with muscat. So it might be worth a try if you can get your hand on a dry muscat from Alsace.
Okay, I'll look for it. I'll look for it.
We
All right, that
tend
worked. So
to,
this was
always think that muscat should pair with asparagus. That's it's written in a book somewhere that muscat goes with asparagus, and it does go wonderfully well with asparagus. But it's more than that, and it pairs very well with anything that has herbal notes and anything that's vegetarian. Mostly vegetable-driven kind of meals pair really well with raw vegetables. Usually with muscat, I particularly like it.
okay. So I tried it with the Lugit. Now I'm trying it with the Grand Cru. Guess what, kids? It goes fantastically with the Rangan Grand Cru.
Anything goes with onion.
Well, that's a marketing slogan if I ever heard one. And anything,
No,
anything.
really, because it has both, that delicate kind of high acidity feel that pairs well with seashells and fish or anything like that, but it's at the same time big enough to even pair with meat if you want to. So really, anything. If my husband and I mostly drink white wine, so if we cook a steak, we will open a bottle of Rangen to go with it. So anything pairs with Rangen.
Well, I didn't have a steak to cook, but I have one in the freezer I can thaw and check it out. I'll let you know how that goes. Yeah, anything goes with the Rangan. So here's what I will say. This isn't an overly ripe tomato because it's still, I picked them. I was away this weekend, so I picked them so that they didn't go bad on the vine, etc. So it's not overly ripe. And with the Lugit, it was good. It was good. I'll give it. It was good, but it was great. It's great with the Rangan. What do you want from me?
Well, the Yeti, I think it's because of that kind of smoother touch. It goes very, very well with more meat with sauce. And I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing that word very in the wrong way. People keep telling me it's sauce, but any kind of white creamy sauce with wine in it, because whenever you put cream in your pot, you should add some Riesling because it always makes it better. In that case, coq au vin, which is poultry with that creamy Riesling sauce, with that kind of Riesling, that's lovely. Tomato might not be the right pairing for Riesling art, but something, any kind of white meat with sauce is perfect.
Well, this caprese has the mozzarella, the creamy mozzarella, and so I did put salt and pepper on it too. And so honestly, that as a salad, not just, like I said, not just the tomato, but that with a salad with both Rieslings went really well. It just jumped off the plate with the Rangan. So, but I love different pairings. Riesling goes really well with Alsatian food. Obviously, it goes great with Asian food. And yes, if you're hearing this, open Asian restaurants in Colmar. You're welcome. But I think that there's such a variety. People get stuck in this. Okay, well, Italian food, you drink Pinot Grigio and Sangiovese, and that's all you drink, and you don't have to. So that's a caprese salad right there. Delicious with Riesling. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. All right, so we
We
brushed.
tend to make food and wine pairing that are region related. So as you say, if we cook Italian, we usually drink Italian. It's sometimes nice to go a bit outside. In the case of Asian food, and no offense to our Asian colleagues, a lot of Asian countries don't necessarily make good wine. So, do pair it with Alsace wine. It really works.
All right, so we touched on Asian food. Asian cuisine goes fantastically with Gewürztraminer, but I have something I want to try, and I'm going to let you guys know how it goes. So, speaking of Italian, pizza. So, this is sausage and vegetable pizza. Marion, what do you think? Are we going to go or not go?
Well, I never thought of pizza with Gewürztraminer, but why not? And to be fair, I just said that usually we pair region with region. Technically, the family of the Traminer, so Gewürztraminer really evolved in Alsace and became Gewürztraminer in Alsace, but the Traminer is from Italy. So it's a family of grape that has its origin in Italy, so it works with your pizza. It makes sense. And if the sausage is maybe a little bit sweet, it might pair well. And it might be rules of wine and food pairing, but at the end of the day, it's whether you like it or not. So it might be completely wrong in the books of whatever sommelier, but if you think it works, then it works.
It's interesting, the vegetal qualities in the pizza, because I like vegetable pizza there's spinach, broccoli, black olives, tomato, and mushrooms, which actually bring out that spicy quality in the Gewürztraminer, that peppery note. It pops it up in the Gewürztraminer. I still get some more of that ripe fruit on the end, but what's really coming through is that pepper, which I think is really interesting.
And I think I might offend a lot of Italians by saying that, but because of the flavors of Gewürztraminer, it might go pretty well with a pizza with pineapple, because you do get a lot of pineapple flavor in Gewürztraminer, so it might work.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. I didn't. You're totally right.
But I'm pretty sure a lot of Italians will just leave the live now.
That is a very controversial note.
But to be fair, Gewürz does pair really well with sweet and savory foods. So I mean, pineapple, not even on pizza, but like Asian dishes with pork and pineapple. I'm not sure what's the name of that dish, but pork and pineapple with Gewürztraminer goes well.
Yeah.
In our class, we have a few, sweet savory dishes as well, where you would have blood sausages with apple on the side. These kind of sweet, savory, easygoing dishes goes really, really well with Gewürztraminer.
I think it's banging, and I just have to test your theory that the Rangen goes with everything. So here it is for you guys.
Well, drink a glass of Rangen with every single meal you will have for the next year, and you can check it.
Yeah, I'll just do that. Let's just do that. Off the chart. Off the charts. All right.
And again, there's cheese on your pizza, so cheese and Gewürz also go hand in hand.
Perfect. And it's very different. Obviously, it brings more of that minerality, more of that acidity. It doesn't have those peppery flavors, those sweeter flavors that the Gewürz does, but it balances very, very nicely as well. So very different experience, and that's why I love food and wine pairings, is because you can get just a different bite, different mouthful, different flavors, different experience, and just such something that's so easy to pizza and wine. Hey. It doesn't.
The next time I have pizza, we'll have to try it with Gewürztraminer.
You have good pizza places in Colmar?
Yes, we do. I can
Fantastic. Fantastic. So tell us about how the 2023 vintage is going. We talked about that you're still in harvest, but any projections for the 2023 vintage rather?
It's hard to tell. It was quite a bit harder to describe than the previous vintages. I think 2021 was clearly cold and rainy. 2022 was clearly hot and dry. 2023 started, so the spring was very early. Then it got very cold. We got some frost in Colmar. But it's really, everything really slowed down because it was cold. Then we had a very, very hot and dry beginning of summer. Then it started raining, but not too much, and in some places, but not everywhere. So Colmar, for example, we didn't get any rain. So it didn't rain much. It was overall very hot, but at the same time, the wines that we currently, you know, the wine is still fermenting, so not everything is ready and can't draw, you know, conclusion right away. But it does taste fairly fresh for some reason. Don't ask me why, but it does taste fairly fresh, still quite high acidity. So it might end up being quite good. No, I think it will be quite good, and it might not taste as a warm vintage as much as we could expect from how hot it was. So a bit weird, but it might be a bit too early to say. You know, as you say, we still. I mean, most of the wine estates are finished with the harvest. We just we towards the end, but Dragon is quite late. That's high altitude, so usually it's a very late concluse. So we still at it, but not everyone is. But it will be quite nice.
Sounds lovely, and we can't wait to hear about how it goes, and we can't wait to taste how it goes. So we've talked about so many great, amazing things about Colmar and Alsace, and obviously you grew up there, and that's your home. But if there was one thing that you had to say, this is why Alsace is so special to me, what would that be?
I would say diversity, really. As you say, it's a small region in French standards, but in general standards, it's a very small wine region, but with an amazing diversity of soil. It's also very diverse culture, you know, difficult history, very diverse heritage. The diversity of terroirs is just amazing on such a small region. We have, you know, sandstone, granite, volcanic soil, gravel soil, high clay content soil. So we really have a diversity of soil that's quite amazing and allows us to make all kinds of very, very different styles of wines from the same grapes, from, you know, different producers. You would have completely different wines just because the terroir is completely different, even though it's not far away. So I would say that's really, really our big strength, is that diversity in matters of terroir.
Fantastic. And if someone wants to try one of your wines, where can they find them? Are they on e-commerce? Do you have to go to a restaurant? Can you go to a retail store?
Well, we sell to the US through our importer, so that's Weigand Metzler. So he then sells to restaurants and wine bars and shops. Yeah. So I don't necessarily know all the, but I think he probably has a list. So that's Peter Weigand on Weigand Metzler. So you would probably have a list there where you have all probably the places where you can find the wines. Yeah. Otherwise, if they do come to Alsace, they're welcome to visit. So just, you know, give us a phone call. Do go and visit Domaine, because that's really a beautiful place to visit. But then also you're welcome to come and visit us at the estates.
And you can follow on Instagram Domaine Schoffit, and for other amazing wine producers from Alsace, follow Drink Alsace as well, and you know, direct message as much as possible so that you can get your hands on these wines and taste what we're tasting, the terroir and the culture and the love and the hospitality. Thank you, Marianne, so much for joining me today. This has been very fun, very enlightening, and very delicious, by the way.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And everyone that's joined us, thank you so much. We always appreciate you joining us and listening to our amazing producers from Alsace. I'm going to actually be on in 2 days. This was a big week for me. So I'll be on Drink Alsace again live, but this time with Domaine Dop, with Marlene Dop. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to give you a final cheers. Cheers to the racket.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.